In a unanimous and historic decision, the High Court today upheld the constitutionality of federal firearm confiscation under emergency circumstances, marking a moment that legal scholars and citizens alike are calling truly unprecedented. The justices, representing a broad spectrum of judicial philosophies, came together in rare agreement, emphasizing the gravity and urgency of the issue at hand. Their decision was delivered in a packed courtroom, with the eyes of the nation watching closely, aware that the outcome would have far-reaching consequences for American society. The announcement sent shockwaves across the nation, instantly dominating headlines and sparking intense conversations in homes, workplaces, and online forums. For many, the ruling represents a turning point in the ongoing debate over gun rights and public safety. The case at the center of this decision, United States versus Donovan, affirms the government's power to temporarily seize firearms from individuals deemed an imminent threat to public safety, even without a prior court hearing. This means that, under certain emergency conditions, authorities can act swiftly to prevent potential tragedies, prioritizing immediate safety over procedural delays. This marks the most significant shift in gun control law in decades, igniting fierce debate and fundamentally altering the Second Amendment landscape. Advocates for gun control hail the decision as a necessary step to protect communities, while opponents warn of government overreach and the erosion of constitutional rights. The ruling has become a flashpoint, fueling protests, rallies, and heated discussions across the country. International observers see this as a pivotal moment, potentially signaling a shift in America's unique approach to gun ownership. Many countries are watching closely, curious to see if this decision will influence global conversations about balancing individual freedoms with collective security. The decision carves out a major exception to the Second Amendment, prioritizing public safety when a clear and present danger is identified. Legal experts note that this exception could set a precedent for future cases, shaping how courts interpret constitutional rights in the context of modern threats and emergencies. As the country reacts, the High Court's voice is unified, but the nation remains deeply divided over what this new legal reality means. For some, it is a long overdue measure to protect lives. For others, it is a troubling step away from foundational freedoms. The debate is far from over, and the true impact of this ruling will unfold in the months and years to come. Red flag laws, or extreme risk protection orders, have existed at the state level for years, allowing temporary firearm removal from those deemed dangerous. These laws were designed to prevent violence by creating a legal pathway for intervention, often credited with reducing firearm suicides in states where enacted. Supporters argue they balance safety and rights with judicial review and due process built in. Critics, however, warn of due process violations and potential abuse, fearing false accusations and government overreach. The patchwork of state laws led to confusion and calls for a federal standard, culminating in the bipartisan Safer Communities Act of 2022. Yet, legal challenges persisted, making it inevitable for the High Court to address whether such preemptive seizures could coexist with the Second Amendment. Today's ruling answers that question on a national scale. United States versus Donovan is a landmark case that began when federal agents entered the Colorado home of Mark Donovan and seized his firearms. This action was not random. It was the result of a serious investigation into Donovan's recent behavior and online activity, which had raised significant concerns among law enforcement officials. Authorities discovered that Donovan had made credible and alarming threats on social media, targeting specific individuals and communities. These posts were not vague or idle. They were detailed enough to convince authorities that immediate action was necessary to prevent potential harm. Unlike state red flag laws, which typically require a judge's approval before any action is taken, this federal intervention was carried out under emergency authority. The agents acted swiftly, without a prior court order, because they believed there was an imminent threat to public safety that could not wait for the usual legal process. After the seizure, Donovan challenged the government's actions in court, arguing that his constitutional rights, especially his Second Amendment rights, had been violated. He claimed the government had overstepped its bounds by taking his firearms without due process. The case quickly escalated to the Supreme Court, where the justices unanimously upheld the government's actions. The court clarified that while the Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms, it is not an unlimited right. In situations where there is clear evidence of a specific and imminent threat, temporary and targeted intervention is justified to prevent violence. Importantly, the ruling emphasized that any such seizure must be temporary. The government is required to provide a prompt post-seizure court hearing, typically within 72 hours, to ensure that the individual's due process rights are protected and that the intervention is justified. The Supreme Court's decision drew on historical legal precedents, noting that throughout American history, the government has had the authority to disarm individuals who pose a credible and immediate threat to others. This power, however, is limited and must be exercised with great care. The court was careful to stress the narrow scope of its ruling. This is not a green light for mass confiscation or broad government overreach. Instead, it is a carefully tailored tool designed for crisis intervention, to be used only in the most urgent and clear-cut cases. Ultimately, the message from United States versus Donovan is clear. The Constitution does not require the government to stand by and wait for tragedy when there is clear, credible evidence of imminent danger. The ruling seeks to balance public safety with individual rights, ensuring that action can be taken to prevent harm, while still upholding the core values of due process and constitutional protection. The High Court's decision instantly polarized the nation, with gun control advocates celebrating a victory for public safety and gun rights groups decrying a grave constitutional overreach. Supporters organized rallies, while opponents vowed political and legal resistance, warning of unchecked government power. Gun sales surged as fears of future restrictions grew. Politicians split along party lines, with the administration promising careful use of the new authority and opponents threatening legislative pushback. Law enforcement agencies now face the challenge of implementing the ruling safely, amid concerns about officer safety and public trust. The decision has become the new flashpoint in America's culture wars. As theory becomes practice, the nation braces for the real-world impact of this unprecedented legal shift. The ruling has upended the political landscape, making gun control the defining issue of the upcoming midterm elections. Politicians can no longer straddle the fence; they must take a clear stand for or against the court's decision. The administration frames the ruling as a bipartisan victory for public safety, while opponents call it judicial tyranny and vow to fight back. The decision could spark new sanctuary states and constitutional challenges, deepening the national divide. Political coalitions are shifting, with single-issue voters reconsidering their allegiances and moderates feeling empowered by the court's consensus. The fallout will reshape party strategies and could lead to unpredictable election outcomes. The political tremors from this decision will be felt for years to come. The High Court's decision sent shockwaves through the firearms industry, with stock prices plunging and uncertainty clouding the future. While panic buying may boost short-term sales, the long-term outlook is now fraught with legal and economic risk for manufacturers, retailers, and related businesses. The insurance industry must reassess risk, and local economies tied to firearms face instability. The industry is expected to challenge the Donovan decision in court and ramp up lobbying efforts to limit federal authority. At the same time, new opportunities may arise in smart gun technology, security, and threat assessment tools. The legal shift could spur innovation, but the traditional firearms market faces a period of profound change. The ruling has deepened social divides, turning gun rights from a political debate into a personal issue that strains community trust. For some, especially in communities scarred by gun violence, the decision brings relief and a sense of safety. For many gun owners, it feels like a betrayal, fueling fears of government overreach and driving some to join militias or defense groups. Online, the debate has become toxic, with misinformation and outrage dominating social media and making civil discourse nearly impossible. The ruling has amplified suspicion and alienation, threatening the social fabric at both local and digital levels. As ideological differences harden, compromise and understanding seem more distant than ever. The nation must now grapple with the personal consequences of this legal transformation. Legal experts across the country agree that the Donovan ruling marks a truly historic moment in American law, with the Supreme Court's rare unanimity signaling a powerful new consensus among the justices, that while the Second Amendment protects individual rights, it also has important public safety limits that cannot be ignored. The key legal challenge now will be defining what exactly constitutes an imminent threat, because if the definition is too broad, it could open the door to endless litigation and legal confusion, while a definition that's too narrow may ultimately blunt the law's intended impact and leave dangerous gaps in public safety. Law enforcement leaders have welcomed this new legal tool, but they caution that how it's implemented will be critical. Without comprehensive training and clear, consistent standards for officers, the risk of tragic or unintended outcomes rises significantly, potentially undermining public trust. Civil liberties advocates remain deeply wary of the ruling, warning that emergency powers, if unchecked, can be abused by authorities and that such measures have historically and disproportionately harmed marginalized communities who already face systemic challenges. Mental health professionals stress that firearm seizure alone is not enough. It must be paired with immediate access to quality mental health care and support services, or else the underlying crisis that led to intervention remains unresolved and the risk of future harm persists. Across the board, experts agree this legal tool is not a cure-all or a simple fix, but must be integrated into a broader, more comprehensive public health and safety strategy that addresses root causes and supports communities. The Donovan decision, while groundbreaking, is only the beginning of what promises to be a long and complex legal and social journey, with many questions still to be answered. The High Court's decision in United States versus Donovan has forced a new reckoning over guns, rights, and safety in America. The ruling affirms that no right is absolute, and that public safety can, in rare cases, take precedence over individual gun ownership. The challenge now is implementation, crafting strict protocols, defining imminent threats, and ensuring due process is real, not just procedural. The nation must move beyond entrenched positions and engage in honest dialogue about balancing liberty and security. The future of rights and safety depends not just on the courts, but on the actions and conversations of ordinary citizens. The balance between rights and safety is dynamic. Each generation must find it anew. The conversation is just beginning.